Inherency. Despite congressional opposition, Trump will continue arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Keel 19. Senators are ramping up efforts to block arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Lawmakers feel urgency to respond to Trump's use of executive powers. The administration notified Congress it was invoking a rare lease provision sales to push through deals, Arms Export Control Act sales, without congressional review in case deemed an emergency cited threats from Iran. There is a growing resistance to allowing the government to operate by emergency. Efforts to block the sales face several hurdles. It is unclear whether senators will be able to force votes. Lawmakers have never tried to pass a resolution or disapprove after the president has invoked this emergency provision. They would need 67 votes to override Trump's likely veto. Advantage 1 oversight. Trump's circumvention over arms sales spills over, decimates congressional power and foreign policy. Anderson 19. A new front has opened up in the legal fight over U.S. supports Saudi intervention in Yemen. The president's authority to pursue arms sales opponents have blocked certain arms sales. Pompeo announced that Trump was bypassing congressional review. Congress pushed back hard. This agreement centers on statutory provisions. Opponents appear to be in an institutional disadvantage due to the president's veto authority. Legal authorities provide Congress with the opportunity to force debate and make Trump take public stances on unpopular policies. This for more legislative action, including changes to the president's legal authority over arms sales. This authority is provided by the Arms Export Control Act. Congress imposes a number of conditions. Section 36 of the Foreign Military Sales Act requires the president to provide Congress with a certification of any proposed sale. INS v. Chadha held that legislative veto is unconstitutional. Congress responded by amending Section 36 of this week in congressional control. Tiered review entails a congressional review period. Congress to raise concerns and have these concerns addressed. These requirements, if the transaction is taking place through foreign military sales or direct commercial sales, Trump elected to move forward despite the emergency. Pompeo was not making declaration used by the president under the National Emergencies Act. Instead, the emergency exception built into the AUCA. Section 36 allows the president to bypass Congress. An emergency exists statutes not identified in any specific conditions for what constitutes emergency. Senators introduced 22 joint resolutions to disapprove for each DCS in its case, but Trump was certain to veto them, and it seems unlikely that 2/3 will support it outright. And the plan restores congressional oversight to F. 6919. Senators are making efforts to block arms sales to Saudi Arabia. The State Department followed the law by invoking its emergency authority to proceed with the transfers among a bipartisan coalition of senators. Support reducing arms sales to Saudi Arabia. The process we are setting in motion will allow Congress to weigh in on the totality of our security relationship with Saudi Arabia, not just one arms sale, and restore Congress's role in foreign policy making. Trump is declaring an emergency to move forward with those sales. Repealing emergency authorization solves and spills over. It's the key issue. Anderson 19. Congress is likely to adopt joint resolutions of disapproval. All of those seem to likely end with Trump issuing vetoes that will allow his policies to proceed. Key Republicans have expressed similar sentiments. Democratic leaders have explored legislation if Congress succeeds in taking action. The Trump administration uses emergency authority by the ACA may have consequences. New permanent constraints on the presidency as Congress reconsiders how much authority it should delegate to the executive branch. Oversight restrains the presidency and makes foreign policy more credible, turns their alliance to sad. Rather than coalition building, the international community has been critical of countries that appear to circumvent these norms, illustrate how much discretion is left to the president of current practices of four powers, and was largely a unilateral effort by his actions were rather declaratory with minimum consultation with Congress. Advantage 2, any stability. U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia destabilize the Middle East and hurt our credibility. Arguments about economic benefit are exaggerating backwards. Land 19. Calls for arms export restrictions have been growing. U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia are deeply troubling. They exacerbate the humanitarian crisis in Yemen and are detrimental to American foreign policy. Shutting the door on Saudi arms sales will allow the United States to stop promoting conflict and improve its economy, reassert American authority in Saudi Arabia, state the benefits without accountability. Saudi Arabia has become increasingly violent, unpredictable. Direct military support has empowered Saudi leaders to lash out recklessly without accountability. American arms sales embolden Saudi to continue the hardcore military approaches. The United States has a role in Yemen's current situation through its Saudi arms sales can take a step towards alleviating Yemen's suffering. Ending arms sales will help resolve the conflict in Yemen. U.S. arms often end up in the wrong hands. Houthi and Iranian forces have also wielded U.S. weapons in Yemen. The Houthis are currently more military sophisticated and better able to strike beyond Yemen's borders than they were at the start of the war. Ending arms sales will disarm groups on both sides. Ending arms sales will ground Saudi Arabia's airstrikes. Saudi Arabia's method of wage war was to perpetrate genocide is by deploying its U.S. fueled air force. Over half civilian deaths have been caused by Saudi airstrikes that target hospitals, funerals, schools, and refugee camps. Ending arms sales will limit Saudi Arabia's capability to entice violence abroad. Ending arms sales will mitigate Saudi Arabia and Iran's thirst for power. Saudi Arabia is gaining more power instead. The United States arms sales to Saudi Arabia are flawed humanitarian, economic, and political terms. And Mideast stability causes extinction, Barron's 2017. Any such rivalry with the serious prospect of Armageddon scenario could sometime be realized in unexpected increments of escalation, or by any all three dominant national players, and instead any sudden quantum leap in destructiveness undertaken by Iran or Israel or the United States, but have to concern themselves with miscalculations, errors, and information and unauthorized use of strategic weapons. Cyber war, authentic nuclear war, would represent precisely such an event, one with utterly unforeseen intersections. That independently escalates. Yemen 2017. Continued violence will put Yemen at risk of harboring of violent groups. Happening inside the Yemen conflict suggests that Emirati and Saudi threat perception is only heightened. Advantage 3, human rights. Trump arms sales to Saudi Arabia put U.S. politics over humanitarian destroys credibility. Simpson 18. The United States' policy abroad to Saudi Arabia has always been a model. Most importantly for humanitarian consciousness and principles, he has taken no steps to reduce the U.S. military involvement in Yemen. Reduced Yemen to starvation and misery. The Saudis cannot continue the murderous bombing of Yemen without our military support. U.S. misread regimes like Saudi Arabia and blindness to their human rights policies is no longer justified. And Trump is abandoning human rights credibility. Strong congressional signal of opposition is key. Oregon 18. Human rights concerns have always compelled with national security. Protecting national security that come up at the expense of human rights arms sales to Saudi Arabia is a prime example. Our government has failed to demonstrate a commitment to promoting and defending human rights. As long as Trump is in power, such ad hoc coalitions of like-minded countries will need to become the norm. There is almost much that parts of the United States government can do to protect human rights. The Trump administration will remain one of the greatest threats to the human rights in decades. And U.S. human rights credibility solves global conflict. Democracy and liberal values promote peace. Korean 17. Authoritarian governments weary of the United States embodying them on human rights are celebrating. Saudi Arabia appear less inhibited going on after opponents assuring that Trump's wings they will get a free pass on human rights violations. By no means is authoritarian enrichment new. The United States often serves as a check on the worst impulsive autocrats. America's strong interest in supporting democracy and human rights abroad, in a moment in which the forces of nationalism, authoritarianism, and hatred threaten to tear societies apart again. Plan. The United States federal government should prohibit foreign military sales and direct commercial sales of arms to Saudi Arabia by eliminating the emergency exception from Section 36 of the Arms Export Control Act.
Everybody ready? So, starting off with, why is foreign policy credibility important?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
So, in your first advantage, you stated that we would increase foreign policy credibility if we have congressional oversight. Why is foreign policy credibility important?
So other countries and our allies trust us?
Okay. Do you think we'll get that as soon as the AF plan goes through?
Yes.
Okay. So what's your solvency for the Middle East advantage? While you're looking for that, can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
So wouldn't we look disjointed if Congress opposes the president? Like as a government, wouldn't other countries perceive us as weaker because our government's not solely unified?
No.
Why?
Because they wouldn't.
Are you not going to give me a warrant for that?
My partner will answer that in a later speech.
Okay. So what's your solvency? Are you still looking for solvency for the Middle East advantage?
Yes.
Okay. You know what? I'll ask you another question while you're looking for that. So will the violence in the Middle East stop if the AF goes through?
Yeah.
Like completely, there's no more war in Yemen if we just stop selling arms?
My partner will answer that in a later speech.
Okay, so do you know the reason behind the Yemeni war? It wasn't in your case, I just wanted to ask you.
No.
Okay. So, what's the guarantee that if, like, we stop selling arms, then our foreign policy credibility will increase and the violence will stop?
I think I cut that part from my case.
Okay, could you please read that out loud then?
No, I cut it from the text to fit it with the 8 minutes.
So it wasn't in your case?
No.
CCX.
We're going to take running patch for a few seconds. And that's all. That's 4 seconds.
Can you turn the chair to the side? Will it fit in the
Oh,
table?
yeah, sorry. Like, other way or?
Like turn it this way? And will the whole chair fit on the table that way?
Yeah, it will.
Yeah, you can read like facing this way just so I can see your face.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, cool. And I know you want the order. Do you want a copy? You want me to send you a copy of the one that's here? You just look. Cool. So it's going to be 3 off, then half in order. Is anyone not ready?
I have a question for the judge. Is one AC, or sorry, is one AC or 2 AC cross-examining?
The person whose speech doesn't come next, so Luke.
All right, is anyone not ready? I'll start my time now. First, end use counter plan. Text. The USFG should require all end-use monitoring of direct commercial and foreign military sales of arms from the United States to be conducted via harmonization of both the Department of Defense and Department of State's monitoring programs, requiring increased public transparency throughout the end-use monitoring process and increased training for applicable Department of Defense and Department of State personnel. Status quo EUM is plagued by inefficiencies and potential shifts from the Trump administration. Incoming regulatory changes will open the floodgates for small arms proliferation and drastically undermine existing EUM frameworks. The counterplan harmonizes the EUM, which resolves any off-turns. That's Abrams in 19. The best way to move forward is to strengthen the State Department's capacity for Congress to better use this authority and not to transfer responsibility to an arm of the executive branch. The State Department regulates the export of military equipment and the Commerce Department controls dual-use items. The State Department includes more vigorous oversight powers than the Commerce Department, including a registration regime. Most Commerce license items, however, are not subject to congressional notification requirements of the prohibition on further transports, governments, and misuse of weapons. Such misuses appear to have recently occurred Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Last year, the government's approach changed. The Trump administration imposed new rules that would move semi-automatic and certain non-automatic weapons with their ammunition, as well as the weapons to Commerce Department control. By shifting licensing authority of the Commerce Department, these weapons will be removed from the statutory regime devised by Congress for these weapons because they're small. There are a number of counterterrorism, humanitarian, and human rights provisions from the Foreign Assistance Act and the Arms Export Control Act that are all tied to the State Department's control. Congress will not be notified of the sale of these weapons. The proposed shift of the jurisdiction of the committee would also undermine key components of the Foreign Assistance Act. The Secretary of State is required by Act to suspend the sale of weapons to countries that consistently violate human rights. No such requirement would exist for the Commerce Department under the proposed rule. The state's approach on end-use monitoring puts a much greater emphasis on pre-license checks rather than post-delivery verification. State's approach is a way better way to prevent misuse and diversion. The Commerce Department has no enforcement personnel for end-use controls of weapons exports in the entire Western Hemisphere and Africa. The proposed rule changes broad implications for the proliferation of untraceable ghost guns and 3D printing guns. The new approach to the undermine already challenged the national system, which is striving to make arms sales trade more responsible approach. Congress will play a significant role in making sure U.S. weapons exports are made as responsibly as possible. Export of arms deserve the highest level of oversight and attention. DoD and DOS harmonization solves EUM shortfalls and other human rights violations since GAL 2011. Coast Guard's implementation of end-use monitoring system programs in Gulf countries may be able to limit the ability of DoD and state to adequately safeguard defense articles upon their rapid storage and eventual use in this country. Recommend the Secretary of Defense and State take steps to harmonize their approaches to end-use monitoring. We also recommend the Secretary of Defense develop guidelines regarding DoD officials and document their efforts to verify this country's security accountability procedures for sensitive equipment and obtain compliance plan as required under the conditions of sale through FMS. Now, I can fill in this ad. First, maintaining U.S. arms sales is crucial to retain power competition and avoid Russia or China filling. This immediately wrecks the economy and the power protection while increasing sales in the long term to combat foreign affairs. This link independently turns the case. That's Majumdar 2018. The Trump administration is hoping to increase the export process for American weapons systems. The United States hopes to make itself bureaucracy more proactive and cover take of the process. The United States is making this policy change with great power competition with China and Russia. We're trying to improve our ability to compete with our adversaries by providing our partners with viable alternatives to foreign products in order to maintain influence and key regions throughout the world. The new policy is only the first step to grow our industrial defense base. We're looking at potential financing options that can make our system more attainable to our foreign partners. Without the changes, the United States is increasingly in danger of losing its market share. China, in particular, increasingly develops and produces ever more capable weapons for the export market. By making some of the previous administration's artificial barriers to the protection of arms and critical partners, the U.S. aerospace and defense industries can be almost $1 trillion annually to the U.S. economy and they support about 25 million American jobs. These nations are unable to purchase American weapons, find that China and Russia are more willing to supply them with comparable systems. We never answered India's request for ballistic missile defense capability, and now India's been forced to consider the Russian S-400 system. And failure to contain China and Russia sparks war fighting and nuclear proliferation that results in extinction. And that's Man-La-Bomb 19. Then we can look at the chain of those powerful countries segment of Russia, China, and Iran as geopolitical logic behind it promising to protect American interests in crucial parts of the world. Washington might forego leading coalitions to contain the three regions' powers, in which case the strength will increase. They may grow aggressive and try to coerce our neighbors. These neighbors currently rely on the American nuclear arsenal to protect them. They may flow Israel and opt to develop or require their own arsenals in order to protect themselves. The American retreat thus make the world more dangerous and nuclear proliferation more likely. Americans having attachment with the world beyond the border may disappear. And by the time they realize what they need protecting, may be too late to do so without great difficulty and high cost. Independently, U.S. power is key to global security. That's Keg in 17. Those who work hard classes make the U.S. position clear for the outside security competition, so for the security situation undergirds everything else. That only the United States has the capacity and unique geographical advantages to provide global security. But without a U.S. willingness to use military power, the system will buckle under the unrestrained military competition of regional powers. Now for the Saudi pro-lift dissat. First, no Saudi pro-lift now. They'll sign a CSA, but increased tensions could easily flip that. That's Amman 2019. Proliferation should not be overblown. The reactor's minuscule size and limited capacity cannot possibly be construed as evidence of a nascent weapons-grade capability. In that, the Saudi company assisting with reactor construction would not supply the Saudis with fuel until they have signed a CSA. The Saudi government has not displayed any overt objections to taking a step. Saudi Arabia declared interest in nuclear powers. Positions, regional power locked in geopolitical competition with the rivals, increased pressure on international non-proliferation in order to justify increased attention. U.S. security guarantees prevent Saudi proliferation. Arms sales are key. Stein 2014. Policy makers feel that Iran's nuclear program will prompt the region in pursuit of these technologies to be used to develop nuclear weapons. Saudi Arabia has indicated a mandate to acquire a nuclear weapon, but its nuclear power plants remain on the drawing board, and there are serious questions about whether or not the kingdom has the capacity to deploy nuclear weapons. Barring any radical shift in the current status quo, the United States will continue to provide its regional allies with nuclear assurances. Yet the dynamics of the region present a unique challenge to security plans. In the past, the United States has sought to reassure its allies with massive arms sales. The missile defense architecture is intended to defend against Iranian ballistic missiles, which also reassuring the Gulf Islands of the viability of U.S. commitment to their defense. The crux of the U.S.-GCC relationship will continue to hinge on the President's ability to convince his or her GCC counterpart of the viability of American security guarantee assurance. Will have to be based on conventional weapons, backed by an ironclad presidential guarantee of the United States' willingness to do whatever means necessary to protect its Gulf Islands. Our U.S. President continue to prioritize his relationship with the GCC relationship. Regardless of the outcome of the current talks with Iran, U.S. will retain a strong incentive to engage with its air battles and deterrence in nuclear-related issues. Studies prove nuclear proliferation makes actors rational and overwhelms impact defense. Escalation is likely. That's Clark 16. Does nuclear proliferation affect the risk that nuclear weapons will be used in a crisis? Most nuclear state confrontations in history have been bilateral crises. One is less likely to choose nuclear option when it is known that the number of nuclear actors in the crisis is small and more likely to choose nuclear option large. A large jump in the number of nuclear actors in a crisis beyond two significantly increases the chance. Choosing the nuclear option players increase and weakens the distrust over the rationality of other players increase and weakens the tendency toward peaceful restraint, even in a world of states trying to behave rationally. Now let's move on to on-case. First, advantage one, oversight. Congress bad. Congressional interference in foreign policy risks war. This is Kreiner 2010. Congressional actions can raise the military costs of the president using his preferred policy course. High-profile congressional opposition to the president's military policy sends important signals of American resolve or disunity to foreign actors. When the president decides whether or not to threaten to target state with military action, he may anticipate the likely effect of congressional reactions. His decision on the credibility of the signal he will send. Opposition can affect the cost-benefit calculations of both the president and the leader of the target state. Open legislative opposition to the president military course sends visible signals of American ambivalence, which may steal the target's resolve to continue to resist once conflict has begun. Now on spillover. Not reverse causal. Congress can't generate political will for checks. That's Ellison 16. The dependent members of each branch of government holding the other branches accountable to limits on power. Congress has often advocated his constitutional responsibility to set limits on presidential power, possibly referring to the president's push past constitutional boundaries. This is the pattern that is applied without any regard to party. Congress has controlled this acquiescence through assertions of power by Republican and Democratic presidents. Republican critics have sailed President Obama as a dictator. Around the national security side, they were often differential. Republicans led Democratic presidents as broad discretion seem to likely take a similar approach when it comes to the Trump administration. Congress will never check the broader presidency. That's Fisher 16. Trump's was not only the voice of the American people, but also take decisive media actions. Rhetoric implies that Moscow wants the unitary presidency to be the least expensive business of the imperial presidency. Trump can fulfill many of his promises legally and virtually unchecked by Congress has proven incapable of mustering much pushback for decades. This is a constant pattern. They never shrink his presidency. Trump can use the Obama playbook and go pretty far. Presidents already have the power to do much of what Trump has proposed. Congress has given the president the authority to negotiate trade deals. For example, Trump could try to renegotiate the nuclear deal with Iran. Presidents routinely order military action without seeking congressional green light. Trump's knack for blunt communication can be an effective defense against efforts by Congress to raid him, and Congress lacks both the will and the way to check the presidency. This proves that no solvency on their first and third advantages. If Congress can't and won't check them, we're simply going to continue arms sales. It doesn't matter. They have a history of not checking the president. There's no reason that changes now. Advantage 2, Middle East stability. Turn, U.S. influence. U.S. arms sales are key to moderate Saudi Arabia. That's Posey and Phillips 2018. And the U.S. support and Yemen rests on many U.S. national security efforts. Saudi Arabia is not the only belligerent in Yemen, and it conduct of the U.S. court also the government of Iran. Undermining Central Coalition in Yemen risks exacerbating the threat to international shipping, giving Iran the opportunity to threaten oil shipping. But the U.S. states cannot afford to abandon its ally and hope for the best. Undermining the Yemeni government and Central Coalition will also make an acceptable political settlement impossible. Yemen, no solvency. Ending sales fails. Saudis have enough weapons. 1918. Based on shocks, we have to keep bombing and discriminate for years, cutting off sales and not meeting the slow the air campaign. Advantage 3, human rights credibility. There are all causes to human rights credibility. Multiple all causes to credibility decline. That's Tyler Rash, go 18. Trump's decision to withdraw from the Human Rights Council, the UN's top human rights body, but the departure symbolizes retrieving leadership on human rights and broadest human rights conditions at home of coming under sharp criticism. The UN denounced the practice of separating children from their migrant parents. The administration has taken actions bound to reduce human rights protections. And I stand open for cross.
Oh, that's you. Cross. You have to go up there.
How is this counter plan different from our plan?
So the counter plan is different because your plan basically uses Congress to move this forward. Our plan, the way it works is we end up, it's end-use monitoring, but it happens through the Department of Defense and the Department of State. They have two monitoring programs in place and it combines them. And when it combines them, they use end-use monitoring programs and agreements, which is basically where we work with other countries. And these two agencies, they have this one program going and they monitor the use of weapons to make sure they're being used correctly. And the whole kind of solvency here is that this is what deters Saudi Arabia because they want to keep using these weapons because it's a real pain to switch them, and we have leverage over them this way. So basically, by using this counter plan, they know they're being checked, and this is kind of our way of checking without using Congress because Congress is a bad actor.
How does end-use monitoring solve?
So the way end-use monitoring solves, I'll explain the process a little bit, and that is that kind of what you're getting at, like the process? So basically, the way end-use monitoring works is, so we make these weapons through either private companies or the US government has them, makes them, and then we sell them to countries. In the status quo, basically, they're only monitored as far as the transaction and the security and the sale goes, but what end-use monitoring does is we continuously monitor the use of these weapons while we're in Saudi Arabia. So basically, if we find that Saudi Arabia is using these weapons in Yemen to commit human rights violations, then we can take action against Saudi Arabia, and because they know we're monitoring, because there's no check right now in place, and because there's no check, these atrocities in Yemen are going on. So with this check, this is what deters Saudi Arabia. But you need the check, and because Congress isn't going to check because they don't have that history, this is kind of acts as a deterrent. Does that make sense?
Who monitors these weapons? Who's in charge?
So the way this works, they harmonize two programs already in place. There's already a program in place with the Department of Defense and one with the Department of State. However, if you go to that first card, Abramson 19, they kind of explain the weaknesses of having the programs separate. There's not much unison. They kind of work independently, and the government's approach has changed. The Trump admin has proposed new rules that would move weapons around, and it basically hurts Congress's checks. But this way, they make them one program. So all weapons that we get rid of are now monitored under this same program. So there's one system. There's dedicated officials at both of these agencies, which are very efficient to work on this and go in and actually check. So there's people from these agencies in this program checking. Does that answer your question?
Do they only monitor? Yes, it does, but do they only monitor the weapons, or do they actually make sure they don't get into?
So the way it works is it's a point of deterrence. Yes, they monitor them, but the whole idea is Saudi Arabia is reactive to this because we have leverage over Saudi Arabia in this way. So we're monitoring them, and then we can take action because there are these agreements in place basically that mean that we can like take the weapons back if they start misusing them. But because Saudi Arabia needs these weapons, because it's really hard for them to switch and it would create problems before that fill-in took place, they're not going to do that. They're simply going to follow, they're going to kind of follow our leverage because they're dependent on us at the moment. Okay. Do you want me to move this chair back? Okay.
We'll be taking for our time.
That's good for us. I'm gonna address you guys real fast, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You asked him 2 questions that he said I was supposed to answer. Can you repeat those questions, please?
What will the disjointed of Congress and the presidents are like, oh, sorry, never mind, solvency from the lease advantage, and, what's the reason behind the only more?
Those are the 2 questions I'm supposed to
Yeah.
answer? All right. Stop. A minute 30.
And, will you guys be emailing me? Blog?
Oh, my Twinsy?
Yes.
Sure. Sure. Oh, no, you.
Yeah, just put it in the email chain that was started.
And that should be it. Oh, I labeled the, not, we're about to check out, that's fine. Labeled it the real 2 and C, by the way, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Did you get,
Yeah.
I'll get it in a second, too.
That's where I can put this, so.
I just pressed reply, so.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's good, so you just,
Yeah, you're fine.
You're the 2 and C.
oh, here, you don't need it?
Yeah, just.
Okay, cool.
No.
And that is not the right
I'll
page.
forward it to you. Okay, there you go.
Oh, there's,
We're good to go.
yeah, give me a second, I'm having technical problems. What is that sound? I apologize, there are some things that are not meant to be in there.
It's all good.
Give me a second.
You just sent us one blank page.
I'm not seeing any text on the document.
All right,
Try pressing Control S. Yeah.
yeah. All right. So if you get anything from this, touching now. There we go.
That was 39.
Um,
I'll wait for that sheet to go on.
yeah, we got it.
All right. Like I said, I apologize, there are some things that are not meant to be in the, but all right.
Yeah.
So I just go?
Is there an order?
I have Saudi Arabia and Yemen stabilized. Sorry.
So give me the order of like the names of your advantages and then the names of the off-case positions in the order you'll address them.
All right, well, I'm sorry, explain more.
So the names of your advantages, you have 3 advantages, right? And then there's 3 off-case positions.
All right,
So give me the names of the advantages in the order you'll address them, and then the names of the off-case positions in the order that you'll address them.
I'm sorry, can I have a couple minutes? I'm like on the wrong
Sure.
thing.
Hey, are you reading the 2NC or 2AC right now?
Like I said, I mislabeled the title.
Oh, okay, that's good, that's good.
Okay.
And some things in here do belong in an NC because I've accidentally like copy and
That's
pasted
okay,
the title.
just
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I only have 2 pieces of evidence currently, and then I was going to respond to some of their questions.
Okay.
So I have advantage 1,
Advantage 1.
sales, her oversight.
So just tell me the name of the advantage in the order that you'll address them. Because I need to get my flows in order.
All right, well, first is sales, her oversight.
Okay, so what advantage is that on?
Oversight, like how,
Okay, so first is oversight. Great, then what's next?
stabilization in Saudi Arabia and Yemen.
So Middle Eastern instability, what's next?
Like I said, I have 2, and then I was going to respond to their questions.
So are you gonna address their answers to the human rights credibility advantage?
Actually, I think I have something on that in here too. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so those 3 advantages, and then what's the order of the off-case positions?
And what do you mean by that?
So do we have answers to their off-case positions? So the disadvantages in the counterplan?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Okay, so it's gonna be the 3 advantages, and then in what order are we going to address the off-case positions?
I was going to address the counterplan.
Okay, the counterplan first,
Mm-hmm.
and then,
I was going to address counterplan. What was the other thing?
I don't think I can help you.
All right,
They had 2 disadvantages.
yeah.
So the Saudi pro disad and the fill-in disad, what order are we going to address them in?
Can I have 1 more minute of prep time? I need to
Sure.
chat with my teammate here, because I am lost. All right, so what's going on here? Species. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Apologize to everyone here. I am really unorganized today.
Are you using an extra card for this?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Huh?
It's a fill.
The fill answers, can we get that too?
Yeah. Control S.
When you like reply, can you click reply all, so it'll get to me too?
Yeah, of course. Alright. Attach file, browse this computer. Here. There it is. There we go. Double send.
Thank you.
Okay, that should be everything taken care of. Got it?
Yes.
Alright, so first advantage,
Okay,
sales hurts oversight.
great.
Second, Saudi Arabia and Yemen stabilize.
You don't have to tell me what arguments you're gonna answer, just the name of the advantage.
Alright, so stabilization in Yemen and Saudi Arabia. I don't have one on human rights, which is sucky, I know, but, and then for the off cases, I have fill-in
Okay,
answers.
are you gonna answer the counterplan and the disadvantage? The
Yeah,
other
yeah,
disadvantage?
I will be answering the counterplan.
Okay,
I do not have cards for that though, I have words.
okay, great.
Okay, you ready? All right. Trump emergency declaration erodes congressional power. Action now is key. Congress could pass a law to prohibit the delivery of these weapons, ban future weapon sales to Saudi Arabia, and rewrite the procedures for consideration and review of arms sales. Congress must fight to reclaim its relevance as an active participant in foreign policy and national security decisions. If it can't stand up to protect its own, prerogatives on arms sales, then its changes of being heard on anything else will be permanently diminished. U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia destabilize the Middle East and hurt our credibility. Arguments about economic benefits are exaggerated and backwards. Land 19. Saudi Arabia is worsening the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. Arms sales to Saudi Arabia have been received. Scrutiny due to the murder of dissident and journalist Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudi government. Calls for arms export restrictions have been growing. The United Kingdom transferred $843 million worth of arms in 2016, but only $438 million in 2017. French exports dropped from $174 million in 2015 to $27 million in 2017. These decreases have tightened the flow of weaponry from missiles to bombs to firearms in Saudi Arabia. U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia are deeply troubling. They exacerbate the humanitarian crisis in Yemen, hurt the American domestic economy, and are detrimental to American foreign policies. Shutting the doors will allow the United States to stop indirectly promoting conflict. U.S. bombs killed 40 children on a school bus in August 2018. A similar strike killed 155 people in a funeral hall, and 97 people were killed at a Yemeni market by a bomb from the United States. This is just showing that we should probably take suits as our allies have in reducing their sales to Saudi Arabia. And to connect this to their counterplan, they're saying that they should have a end use is what it's called, right? End use plan or whatever. The reason that wouldn't work though is because we're selling to the Saudi Arabian government who's using them. So if we sell to the Saudi Arabian government, and we know that they're going to use them to bomb because we know that this is going on, then it's not going to stop anything. Scrolling down to my next card. The emergency exception demonstrates checks and decimates checks and balances. The plan solves. Calls are mounting to block arms sales. Frustration is focused on invocation of emergency powers to bypass congressional review. Hoyer condemned blatant violation of checks and balances. Hoyer vowed to ensure that Congress asserts its proper role over arms sales. The new sales provides new momentum for pursuing legal action and legislation. The Arms Export Control Act contains an exemption to sell weapons to partners in cases of emergency, something desired to speed up the process amid crisis. Trump appears to be using these tensions with Iran as a reason to push for weapons. Even Republicans are vexed. The president's decision to use an emergency waiver on these sales is unfortunate and will damage certain future congressional interactions. The administration's decision to bypass Congress and sell arms to Saudi Arabia is misapplication of this provision and abuse of power. I'm pretty sure I said it was gold 19, the card, but I could be mistaken. And then to my second point, stabilization in Saudi Arabia. U.S. should end sales. Saudi Arabia is destabilizing. American policymakers has tried to halt weapon sales. Khashoggi's disappearance has created a pivotal moment. Congress can untangle the United States from Saudi crimes. Selling weapons to the country was a risky endeavor. On the risk assessment index, meant to objectively measure the risk of negative consequences flowing from American arms sales, Saudi Arabia scored a 12 on a scale of 5 to 15. Congress has a responsibility to consider foreign policy implications, but the smartest move for policymakers is to halt deliveries to the kingdom. This is U.S. arms sales destabilize Yemen by Al-Thani 2018. The United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia launched airstrikes this month in Yemen that hit a bus filled with children, killing dozens of young boys who were on a school field trip. UAE and Saudi Arabia have been busy cutting secret deals with Al-Qaeda fighters, paying some to leave key cities and towns, letting others retreat with weapons, equipment, and cash. Our neighbors see the war as a public relations exercise. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates try to ignore radicalization within their own borders. The result was Bin Laden's attacks. All right, for the fill-in, sorry, technical difficulties. No shift, Saudi Arabia depends on the U.S. By 2018. While it's true that Russia and China are major exporters, the claim that U.S. weapons can easily be replaced is not. Once a country is locked in, the cost to switch can be huge. Personnel must be retrained, spare parts need to be replaced, and operational changes may be necessary. After being so reliant on U.S. weapons, the transition costs, armaments from Russia, China are not as sophisticated. Saudi Arabia purchased virtually all from American and European countries. The U.S. has significant leverage, and Saudi threat to retaliate would not be credible. To answer their questions, the reason R is solvency is because whenever we do this, they can't switch, and it stops all like bombings in Yemen and like future like disruptions and destabilizations in the area. I would also like to point out that Daniel, the A1, right? A2?
And
1. He said himself that it would be cost expensive and time consuming to change your arms, like from America to China or Russia. To answer the other question, what was the cause of the Yemenese war? It's a proxy war, or so I've been told. And then finally, would America look bad because of the Congress overruling the president? Maybe it would, but in the past, people have also said these things, and America has still triumphed through all the time. So it doesn't matter if it makes us look bad because it's how our civilization has run for so long. Done. Good. Oh, do you stand for, oh, you're not for that. Yes. I'm shaking right now.
Don't do this practice round. All right, ready?
Yes.
Great, I'll start time now. So on the first piece of evidence you read, how does this kind of answer our response that says Congress is a bad actor?
Well, it's saying maybe, I guess a better way to put it is, it needs to become a better actor, because it is a vital part of our government. In order to become that better actor, it would need more power.
Okay, in the past, hasn't Congress had a history of taking an action and simply ceding power to the executive branch? Like, for example, setting up federal departments to do what's really Congress's job, and during the Iraq War, like, don't they have a history of constantly ceding power when they really should be taking it?
Well, I don't really think that's Congress's fault. I think it's more of the president's fault and the executive government's fault for taking these powers without consent from Congress.
Wasn't Congress the one who gave them those powers?
Not in all cases.
Okay, so you read a card that says that talks about Saudi Arabia destabilizing. What's kind of the wording on that card? Can you explain it? Like, how does it say that Saudi Arabia is really destabilizing right now?
It's Saudi Arabia has been involved in so many crimes that I guess America has to untangle themselves out of it because Saudi Arabia is so destabilized.
So, because Saudi Arabia commits crimes, how is that whether a nation's like stable or not?
I don't have an answer for that, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So can you kind of go, how do you, I guess, going back to the solvency point from our backgrounders cross-ex, how do you guys solve for the first and third advantages? Can you kind of walk me through, like, can you walk me through the how specifically?
Your first and third advantages?
Your app, so it would be.
Your oversight and your human rights right?
Yeah, like how does this plan, like what are the steps that this plan does? Like what occurs that ends these things?
Well, when we take out, right, when we stop selling to Saudi Arabia, the first thing that will happen is, no matter what the president says, he can't sell, which will make it so oversight is given back to Congress, and like I said, they'll give them more power so they can become a better actor.
Okay, now would you agree that's still dependent on Congress actually taking action? Like if Congress doesn't take any action even after the plan is passed, that we still sell weapons?
They are taking action.
Okay,
So wait. I'd like to explain how they're taking action.
I'm actually,
Oh no, sorry, I'll go ahead, I'm sorry.
but I just want to get to the feelings out before time runs out. If so, China or Russia sells weapons for cheaper, then wouldn't Saudi Arabia be able to switch?
It's not only about the cheapness, it's also about the time it takes to replace those parts and those items, like the replaceable parts for pieces of equipment and the time it takes to train the people to do those things.
All right, thank you, I think that's time.
I'll take a little, we'll keep running product starting now.
That's cool. All right, we're gonna stop, Brett.
Oh, we should go ahead and say this.
Okay. Then we've used a minute 30, we have 6.5 left.
How much time do we have, Judge?
8 minutes total.
All right, so we've used a minute, 30 in a minute. So we have veteran.
So Judge, while I'm sending this email, I just want to let you know that we're splitting the block with me taking the Catalan and Philip DA and my partner taking the case and Saudi Pro.
You don't have to tell me what's gonna be in the 1 hour before the 1 hour happens.
Okay.
So why do you keep calling me judge? Why
Sorry.
do everybody keep calling me judge?
I'm sorry.
What do you want us to call you?
Ragya?
I'm sorry. Okay, so you should, I just sent it, so. Everybody, okay, anyone who's not ready.
1 second, it doesn't look good.
Yep.
What's the order?
Counterplan and then fill in. Anybody who's not ready? Okay. UN Salt extend ARISM 19 and GOAO 11 from the 1NC as the EU counterplan allows us to solve for the... Wait, I'm so sorry. I started timing wrong. Sorry, that's on me. Okay. Now we can start. So EU installed extend ARISM 19 and GAO 11 from the 1NC as the EU counterplan allows us to solve for the entire app plan without triggering any impacts of the DA. We can prevent human rights abuses and maintain peace in the Middle East without taking away arms and destabilizing the whole region. So on some cards, we stalled status quo. DOD and DOS coordination resolves all status quo. UN shortcomings ensures lack of abuse. Delta 18. Training education across the DOE and DOS workforce should be prioritized. There should be increased emphasis on interagency coordination to improve DOS and DOE ability to try and monitor and use U.S. weapons provide security parties. Following actions to be taken first to improve the cleanness and applicants of Blue Lantern check. Second, to report oversight and accountability. Blue Lantern implementation guidance to particular conditions under which site visits are required to complete a pre-license screening. Third, to improve tracking of FMS weapons. The EU should adjust gaps in documentation and record keeping. And solves human rights. EU and reform solves via focus on post-transfer follow-up and increase accountability, especially by those prone to military and human rights abuses. Throw on door money 18. The U.S. should typically expend its tracking the use and misuse of American weapons, current use, modern digital collection of data on how weapons are used, while transporting systems to monitor, prevent dispersion and corruption is not focused on the use of force by the client rather than focusing on tracking abuse down to a single military unit, and use monitoring should hold countries accountable for their actions of their militaries as a whole, and use monitoring should be taken into account a country's strategic environment and should assess weapons sales based on a customer's history and ongoing conflicts. And stronger EU and transparency shores up human rights protections and international law credibility. Shiloh and Abraham 19. Much greater transparency in the arms sales process at the public level is critical under current procedure. Congress is notified about potential arms sales The administration should make clear when delivery is imminent so as to create predictable moments for oversight. These reports, as well as end-use monitoring, should provide information on the number of specific weapons and global and other data rather than broad categorical details. A recent report offers suggestions that run the life of a weapon from pre-transfer to end-use monitoring with trigger mechanisms along the way that allow for reassessment as situations change. And increased EUM transparency solves HR abuses and black market sales. Walto 7. Advocates concerned about the effects of U.S. arms transfer on human rights would do well to publicize discrepancies between aspects of arms transfer policy that are publicly advertised and those in the shadows. Attention should be drawn to provisions of the law implementing regulations programs that allow any weapons transaction to escape the most robust standards of accountability. Where full accountability is not established, the risk of diversion to the black market can be high, and probability weapons will be used to detriment of human rights will increase. And lifetime tracking resolves most abuses. They're all in 18. The United States should implement a more comprehensive system of any monitoring that tracks not only the physical location of American weapons, but also account for how these weapons are used over decades. Much of the difficulty weighing in risks and benefits is part of the lack of data on what happens over the long term. And solves Middle East instability, strengthening EUM shores of failure of monitoring the status quo, Congressional Research Service. 17. Challenges accounting for U.S. arms have grown as the United States has transferred more weapons, and the Army did not have effective controls to track equipment transfer provided to Iraqi forces through the Iraq Training Equipment Fund. And use monitoring is an important part of ensuring that the recipe governments in the Middle East adhere to human rights standards. The GAO recommended more comprehensive vetting of recipients of security assistance and the development of guidance by both departments, establishing procedures that for documenting and use monitoring efforts and violations thereof. And moving on to the fill-in DA, extend our Modular 18 card, as this card independently turns the case by stopping the sale of arms to Saudi currently and allowing other countries to fill in. The act increases sales of arms in the long run to be foreign offers and maintain some semblance of control in the Middle East. Extend our Mandalon 19 card as well when we say that we spark nuclear proliferation, which will lead to an extinction level event. This impact is the biggest impact in the entire round, and let me tell you why. We outweigh because of two reasons. One, time frame. Nuclear proliferation by Saudi Arabia will happen as soon as the act plan goes through. Stopping arms sales to Saudi will not stop a proxy war fueled by religious tensions in no way whatsoever. If anything, by taking away U.S. arms, we're allowing Saudi to return to Russia or China for arms, and both countries have more human rights abuses racked up against them than the U.S. combined. So, and then number 2, magnitude. The act will cause the extinction of humanity, whereas the biggest benefit to doing the act that they can access is foreign policy credibility, which again means nothing in the face of a nuclear war. They use Way 18 to say that Saudi can't switch because they rely on U.S. weapons, but that's the status quo, not what will happen if the act plan goes through. This entire line of reasoning shouldn't even be flowed because the act isn't based on the status quo, it's based on the results of the act. They use Cargo 18 and say that no other countries will fill in, but fill in inevitable and will happen. If not by China, then Russia. We can't risk losing influence in volatile areas such as the Middle East. Cessation of sales to Saudi Arabia wrecks relations and causes Russian and Chinese diversification, locking the United States out of the region. Rounds 19. Embarking Saudi Arabia is unlikely to fundamentally alter Saudi policies, but likely to further damage U.S. ties with Riyadh. In the near term, Saudi Arabia can substitute other weapons instead of U.S.-built arms. Saudi can also rely more heavily on the Emirati and Egyptian partners using non-produced arms. In the medium to long term, such an embargo is likely to push the kingdom to greater arms diversification. The United States will eventually lift any potential arms embargo with little change in Saudi behavior, but only after having provided an opportunity for adversary states such as Russia and China to gain a strategic foothold in Riyadh. And fill-in leads to collapse in the global order. It turns the case. Instead of solving for global conflict, the act pushes the world to a more intensive global conflict between some of the most influential countries in the world. Russia-China U.S. war has the possibility of leading to nuclear war and can cause extinction-level impacts. Losing power competition with China and Russia risks collapsing the global order. Mandalon 19. As U.S. global military hegemony persists, the possibility of developed nations fighting one another seems ever more remote. The United States should apply containment once again on Russia and China. They seek to overturn political military and economic arrangements. The United States helped establish the United States allies and global order. They will suffer a major blow. And strong global order solves every impact. Case 17. China and Russia was the greatest challenge to the international order created and sustained by the United States. That the world could return to condition was that in the 19th century with competing powers clashing. The role of the United States has been critical. The face with these obstacles, nuclear powers engineer a weakening of the U.S. world order. And now onto the DA proper. They didn't really attack uniqueness or link, but I'll send them anyways. Uniqueness: Chinese arms export declining now due to lack of new client states. Both at 19. To the latest 5-year study period, arms transfer rose 8% from the previous period. Volume of China arms transfer from 2014 to 2018 rose by less than 30% between the 2009-2013 period. Figures suggest growth in China's arms export has slowed radically from the previous start of the decade. China's arms exports will possibilities are limited by political reluctance in many countries to purchase Chinese arms. And Russia influence and arms sales massively